So it's clear and equal choice of secular recovery support by Byron Kerr, who's the gentleman sitting over there waiting to come here. There has been a march of unanimity by every high court in the U.S. ruling that 12-step support programs are inherently religious. The treatment industry and local governments ignore these rulings in violation of the First Amendment and continue to promote substance abuse treatment that exclusively coerces or compels people into inherently religious 12-step programs. Byron Kerr is extremely active with LifeRing Secular Recovery, has his URL there, and currently serves as the chair of the LifeRing Board of Directors. So please give Byron, Lord Byron, a big, he doesn't want to be called Brian, so I make that mistake every time because I'm trying to avoid doing it. So let's give him a good hand.
That's green. Good morning. My name is Byron Kerr. You can call me a secularist, you can call me a humanist, an atheist, or a non-believer. Any of these titles are okay with me. I don't use any of them for myself, but I have found a new title that I like a lot, and I'll share it with you in a little bit. My personal story regarding atheism began many decades ago when I was asked to leave the church that I was raised in. An instructor in a so-called Bible class said I was there just to create trouble and ask too many questions and asked me to leave. You might say that I was disruptive, though in a congenial way. It was an easy jump at that point to begin questioning everything. In addition to the labels I mentioned, you might also call me an alcoholic, an addict, or a former substance abuser. I call myself sober. My personal story regarding sobriety began several years ago when I voluntarily approached my employer for help. I had no job performance issues, I had no DUI arrests or a record. I simply wanted any available assistance in tackling my substance use issues. The Employee Assistance Program at my job was very welcoming and assured me that they would help. Excuse me, I forgot entirely about the PowerPoint. At any rate, the Employee Assistance Program at my job was very welcoming, and they assured me that they would help. After some evaluation of my use and my personal situation, we agreed that even though outpatient treatment was appropriate, because of my schedule, they recommended that I attend a 28-day residential treatment program. I agreed initially, but after looking at the residential facility they were sending me to, I said, but the treatment facility was named Azure Acres, an obvious play on the acronym AA. Indeed, Azure Acres uses a 12-step approach exclusively. I found and requested an alternate treatment facility that offered choice, offered 12-step as well as secular approaches, but I was refused the alternate. So I drove myself to Azure Acres, did my 28 days, kicking and screaming most of the time, and failed. in sobriety shortly after leaving Azure Acres. I didn't succeed in my sobriety until a few years later when I was able to choose support that fit my worldview. I now have several years of sobriety behind me. I'm very active with LifeRing Secular Recovery and currently serve on their board of directors. I've started numerous LifeRing meetings throughout Northern California. Local governments throughout California, and indeed throughout the entire country, have become completely entangled with 12-step organizations. 12-step organizations have been ruled by every federal court to ever rule on this issue to be inherently religious. 12-step organizations include Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Marijuana Anonymous, all of those. Now, it should be said, all of these organizations I regard as very fine organizations for their efforts at helping people with substance use issues. I have a great deal of admiration for them. I've found no value there myself. Government, in some cases, refuses to even acknowledge secular options. You're not given a clear or equal choice of a secular option, and if you're being prosecuted, you do not feel free to object because you're under the duress of sentencing or probation. Some jurisdictions allow a secular option, but only if a defendant objects. Some jurisdictions allow no choice at all. There's very strong evidence indicating that if an individual is allowed to choose the method of support that best fits their worldview, the efficacy is greatly increased. Substance abuse problems are epidemic throughout the country. If a person comes into contact with local government as a result of alcohol or drug use, you can be sure they will be referred to a religious sobriety support program. In most cases, the referral will not mention any specific secular option. Local governments, behavioral health departments are entangled with religious support programs to the extent of declaring the religious program to be the only way to address sobriety issues. Government should certainly have the right to order or coerce persons with substance use issues to attend support. Government does not have the right to exclusively order or coerce citizens into religious support without a clear and equal choice of a secular option. A person's choice of support should have no effect on their freedom. Secular sobriety support organizations exist throughout the U.S. but experience resistance and even refusal to be recognized by local governments and courts. Secular support organizations have difficulty growing because they're not recognized, and they're not recognized partly because they've been unable to grow. One specific challenge to this practice has occurred in federal courts in California. Barry Hazel Jr. is a man from Northern California. His mother is a newspaper editor, and his father is an on-air radio host with an NPR station out of Redding and Chico. Barry Hazel Jr. was arrested and charged with possession of methamphetamine. Mr. Hazel pled no contest to the charge in a California Superior Court. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison to be served at the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Norco facility. After serving his sentence, Mr. Hazel was released on parole. A condition of Mr. Hazel's parole was that he attend a residential drug use treatment facility. Mr. Hazel immediately stated that he was committed to a drug-free, abstinent lifestyle, but did not want to be sent to a religious-based treatment facility. He stated this clearly to both his parole officer, Mr. Crowfoot, and to the state's contractor for treatment placement, WestCare Incorporated. WestCare ignored Mr. Hazel's request for secular recovery and placed Mr. Hazel in the Empire Recovery Center, which uses a 12-step based or inherently religious treatment philosophy exclusively. The Empire Treatment Facility expelled Mr. Hazel after a short time because, this is a quote from the court records, he was disruptive, though in a congenial way. What that means to me is that he was probably asking questions. Mr. Hazel was arrested immediately by a Mr. Crowfoot, who was his parole officer, and Mr. Crowfoot initiated processes to send Mr. Hazel back to prison for an additional 100 days. Mr. Hazel sued in federal court for the Eastern District of California. He sued for compensatory damages because his freedom was taken from him unlawfully. He sued for punitive damages because the law is well settled. And he sued for injunctive action against the state of California because the law is also, once again, well settled. The district court ruled that Mr. Hazel's First Amendment rights had been violated. But in spite of that agreement, Mr. Hazel was awarded 0 compensatory damage, 0 punitive damage, and there was no injunctive relief. Mr. Hazel appealed to the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, and on August 23, 2013, a Ninth Circuit panel of 3 judges issued a ruling reversing and remanding the case back to the district court on all 3 issues. The Ninth Circuit ruled that compensatory damages are never discretionary if there was an actual injury from a violation of a constitutional right. Mr. Hazel's loss of his freedom for 100 days certainly qualifies as a substantial injury. The Ninth Circuit also ordered the lower court to conduct a new trial regarding punitive damages because the original jury had received incorrect instructions from the district judge. State agents and contractors are not immune from liability in this case because the existing precedent is clear. In addition to the California Department of Corrections employees, WestCare Incorporated is liable as a state contractor for ignoring and violating Mr. Hazel's First Amendment rights. In October of 2014, a settlement was announced at the federal district court of $1.95 million to be paid approximately half and half by the state of California and WestCare for violating Mr. Hazel's freedom and his civil rights. Mr. Hazel remains, to this day, committed to a clean and sober life and has built himself a home in the Shasta Trinity area. I'd like to tell you that this case resolved a lot of issues surrounding this, but just last week, a new case has arisen in Seattle that is being pursued by the American Humanist Association's legal department, the Apignani Humanist Legal Center. A gentleman named Michael Baker pled guilty to a charge of driving under the influence. And part of his sentence was that he was forced to attend AA with no choice. In the Seattle area, there are LifeRing meetings. There are SMART meetings, which is another alternate secular approach. Mr. Baker specifically asked for those choices and was forbidden, was not allowed. The Apignani Humanist Legal Center has stepped in and written to both the court and the probation department in that case. So this is just developing. It occurred, I believe it was Wednesday of last week. At any rate, LifeRing Secular Recovery is a network of support for all people wanting to get and stay clean and sober from alcohol and all other non-medically indicated drugs. The LifeRing approach is based on our 3S philosophy of sobriety, secularity, and self-empowerment. By sobriety, we mean abstinence from alcohol and all other non-medically indicated drugs. If you're tackling one addiction at a time, that is understandable, but we will ask about your plans to abstain from all addictive substances. By secular, we mean that we do not embrace or condemn anyone's personal beliefs surrounding spirituality or supernatural. We do not advocate for atheism or spirituality of any kind. We advocate sobriety. By self-empowerment, we mean that no external force is responsible for crafting or maintaining your sobriety. You possess the power within you to remain sober. We merely assist in strengthening that existing power. We host a wide variety of support formats, including face-to-face meetings, online chat meetings, online voice meetings, social networking, email lists, and online forums. Each person is welcome to choose the format that they're most comfortable with and/or any combination that works. LifeRing currently has face-to-face meetings in 17 states and 7 foreign countries. This is somewhat of a duplication. I'm going to skip forward a bit. We offer 3 different publications. I meant to stand them up. This is our principal text, which is basically who LifeRing is, what we do, how we do it. It was written by Martin Nicholas, who is a retired attorney living in Berkeley. He was one of our co-founders originally 16 years ago, but has retired from LifeRing, from his law practice. We can't get him to do anything anymore. However, that being said, that's one of the things I admire about the organization is Marty, at about 5 years ago, said, sink or swim, you're on your own, and left us. He refused to allow the organization to become a cult of personality. The other books we offer, this is a workbook that an individual in recovery can use to develop their own tools and their own path. And the third book is a handbook for the facilitators of our meetings. Our facilitators, we use the title convener, which simply means a person that brings people together. Our meetings resemble a group therapy session with no leader. So, other support organizations, secular support organizations in the U.S. include, besides LifeRing, the oldest secular support organization is Women for Sobriety, which is a wonderful organization. We regard them as kind of a friend. SMART Recovery. SMART is an acronym. I believe it is Self-Management and Recovery Training, I think. Also a very friendly organization to LifeRing. We invite each other to our conferences and so on. SOS is another organization. They do not have any presence in the Bay Area or Northern California, but they are active throughout the rest of the nation. Rational Recovery is another. They have withdrawn from the support arena and simply sell books and DVDs, but very valuable approach as well. And there is also a splinter Alcoholics Anonymous organization that is still recognized by the General Services offices. And that is We Agnostics and Free Thinkers, Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't understand their approach, and I wish them well. They still somewhat embrace the external force being necessary to make someone sober, and I don't understand that, but I'm sure they do. The efficacy of all of the support available for people with substance use issues is extremely difficult to study, and most of the studies that are out there are near worthless. There's no. It is almost impossible to follow an anonymous population. So therefore, the studies are highly questionable. The only thing I will say about efficacy, I would be very surprised if LifeRing, for example, or any of the alternates could demonstrate any superiority, other than if someone has chosen that as their path, it is because they sought them out and were enabled to make the choice for themselves. So in that case, there's a small chance that LifeRing may be slightly more effective than others, but I doubt it. That's all I have today. Any questions, please? Yes, sir.
Hold on a second. Everyone should have the mic when they're talking, so let me walk them over. With people scattered all over the place, remember, I might not see you in my peripheral vision.
Your vision's fine, Carl. Hello, I'm Chip.
Hi.
I first want to say that I support your work and your efforts, but as the child of an alcoholic who was an atheist and raised an atheist child, I have great hopes for the future functional and economic success of LifeRing. I'm not challenging anything you have presented here, and yet I need to present that my father walked into his first AA meeting at the age of 45 or so, and declared his higher power to be science, and that was utterly acceptable in Burlingame, California, and died with a 25-year chip in his pocket.
Yeah.
I have read the big book. I am deeply familiar with all of AA. And yet, despite a reading that shows it to be inherently religious, a higher power called, the acceptance of a higher power named science suggests that some more discussion is needed. I'd like to hear your side of that discussion.
The difficulty I had with the 12-step concept was that an external force was responsible for my sobriety. Using science in this case, I suppose would be a workaround, and that's okay. I have no problem with that. Somewhere in the range of 30 to 40% of our members or participants do 12-step in addition as well. We make no demands that someone convert to LifeRing. That's not. We don't care.
The courts might. There.
Well, the courts don't have the right to do that. Is the point? The federal rulings that I've referred to include 4 separate rulings by 3 circuit courts. I don't know how familiar you are with the federal system, but the only court higher than a circuit court is the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refuses to even listen to the argument.
Pick it up.
So it is the law in, geographically, it's about 40% of the U.S. It is the law that clear and equal choice is required. In my case, I could not get over the fact that in the 12 steps it says God, God, God,
Oh, yes.
God,
It's all
God.
over.
And in addition to 5 gods, there's he, him, his. It's a very antiquated.
Yes, it was written by men.
Yeah. And that's just me. I couldn't get past that. But I recognize that other people find lots of value there. I would suggest that the active ingredient in 12-step or LifeRing or SMART or any of the support groups out there, the active ingredient is the social interaction, the encouragement from peers, the ideas that you might gain, that sort of thing. Again, for me, I could not do 12-step. I was repulsed by it. I probably shouldn't have been, but that was me. So. Yes.
Hi, Byron. I'm
Hi.
Alex.
Yes.
I was wondering, are there any LifeRing meetings going on in this area?
In Santa Clara County, exactly 1.
Oh, really?
Soon to be 2, hopefully. But the institutions here have been highly resistant. I have been in correspondence with the behavioral health people, and when that appeared to stall out, I corresponded with county council, pushing the legal angle. It is still in progress.
Is the problem getting the courts to accept it?
That is part of the issue, and the issue there, though, is that the courts in Santa Clara County, you have the Superior Court of California for Santa Clara County. We don't have municipal courts in California anymore. We have the Superior Court that takes care of all of the local issues on a county-by-county basis. So the Behavioral Health Department of Santa Clara County writes policy that is enforced by the Superior Court of California for Santa Clara County, and when you question the legal authority, they point the fingers at each other. So it is very challenging to determine who is responsible for what legal aspect. The court is a state entity, the behavioral health people are a county entity, and it's all entangled. So, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious on your take about the effectiveness of any of these programs.
Mm-hmm.
I know several people that have been in AA.
Sure.
I've gone to an AA meeting with them, and my take on it was a lot of people with real problems reinforcing each other that they're victims and problematic, and so I'm wondering, what's the success, and is it people come in and out that are most successful, or they're in there for 15 or 20 years? I think of the Woody Allen oxymoron. I've got a great therapist. I've been using him for 15 years.
Yeah. To start, I don't know the answer about effectiveness, and the best numbers out there are lousy numbers. But there's a retired Harvard professor, Dr. Lance Dotis, that puts the efficacy of the 12-step world somewhere between 5 to 10%. A placebo rate is 3%, roughly, 3 to 5. So efficacy is highly questionable, and it's extremely difficult to study. As I said earlier, I doubt very much that any of the alternates are any better. I hope we're no worse, but it's almost impossible to study. All I can answer regarding the 15 years of therapy, in my case, I remain active in the recovery world I don't think I need it at this point for myself, but I remain active because I was so frustrated by not being allowed choice. That's what drives me to remain active. And when I see a case like the one that just happened last week, a man in Seattle asking for choice and not being allowed choice, that drives me on further. So.
I was surprised to hear that Rational Recovery was just publishing now and not running things. What caused them to change? I always heard such good things about them.
I don't know. Jack Trimpe is the man behind Rational Recovery, and he came up with a theory sometime within the last decade or so that support meetings were not necessary. And I don't know that I disagree with that. I don't know that I agree either. I find some value in group meetings, the peer support, the encouragement, that sort of thing. I'm not going to condemn it either, that his idea that support meetings are unnecessary. If someone is able to succeed following that method, that's wonderful. That's all we're asking for. But I don't know the reasoning behind why he felt face-to-face support meetings were not necessary.
Hello, I'm a humanist, and I'm interning at different places, mental health and recovery places, and there is a lack of literature and stuff of options. Like, people don't know it. There's a 800 number for calling about secular options, but hardly anybody knows about it. It's all 12-step programs and different stuff. And I'm at like Zephyr, and it's mental health, and it's very science, but it's a self-help center. So, do you have flyers and stuff? Because I have connections where I can bring them to 3 or 4 different places.
Yes. No, we have...
Get permission to put
sure.
them there.
And I'd be happy to send a package of literature and books and whatnot. We have a budget, very small, but we have a budget for exactly that type of thing. But in the meantime, yeah, there's handouts that I have. Talk to me.
Yes, I have a comment. Somebody else wants to raise their hand. Okay. One thing that's interesting to me, anyhow, is the way that AA got so dominant in that, I don't know if you ever heard of the term survivorship bias, but what happens is those who stay in there and are relating to each other believe it's 100% effective.
Yeah.
See? In the meantime, yeah, but what about the people, for example, who were never in any program at all and they recovered? There's no way to get that data, right? Yeah. How do you get that? So anyway, their claims are really interesting. And also, I went to a couple of their meetings, found it really interesting. One of them, someone brought up this comment about, they don't believe in God. It's okay, God can be a toilet seat. I've never heard anything, doorknob, whatever, so you can just imagine, they're talking about if you're throwing up over the toilet, so whatever, you know what I mean, they had that kind of ideas around them. And, a person sitting there in the audience whose mind is working would say, huh? I mean,
Well, there's, if I was a person of faith, that would be insulting to me. Wait, he gets to have a toilet seat and I have to have a God? And there's also the ongoing 12-step mantra of it's spiritual, not religious. 90% of the meetings open with a prayer. They close with a prayer. It didn't work for me. That's Yes.
I'm Jim. I was wondering what prevents these several secular groups from uniting and thereby gaining a great deal of strength and better budgets?
Yeah, excellent question. We have worked together in small arenas, and particularly when there's really an egregious offense like the one going on right now in Seattle. I have offered to write letter on behalf of of my organization, LifeRing, to the court and probation officer, but that's up to the legal help. I'm not a legal expert and don't know. But SMART also has done that. We have worked together. I have proposed that we form some sort of entity to work together on issues like this, legal issues. There are some philosophical differences between us in terms of how we approach sobriety. They're not we're not adversarial in any way, but in the case of Women for Sobriety, obviously they're very focused on the gender issue, as they should be. And in the case of Smart Recovery, they're pseudo-professional. They require that their facilitators be trained and whatnot. We are proudly non-professional. We try not to be unprofessional, but we have really embraced a different approach altogether. Yes.
Yes. I was wondering, what's the difference between LifeRing and some of the others, and it's evidence-based, science-oriented, cognitive behavioral therapy? Is that used?
Yeah, we are highly compatible with CBT or motivational interviewing. I don't know if you're familiar with Dee Dee Stout. We've worked with her quite a bit about regarding motivational interviewing. But the thing that I like to avoid is any sense of being a professional. I don't want to cure anybody. I don't have the skill. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the training. I'm not a professional. I can cheer someone on. I might be able to give them an idea that might be helpful. We try to avoid any specific advice in the form of "you should," other than "you should stop drinking and using." But beyond that, how you do that is entirely your choice. SMART, as I mentioned, is a quasi or pseudo-professional approach. They train their facilitators. I guess that would be the biggest single difference. Women for Sobriety has a little more structured approach. They have, I think it's a 13-point plan that they like to see their participants work through. Some people would say that LifeRing is unstructured. I would disagree. It is very much self-structured. We put the entire responsibility on the individual. We say you must compose your own plan. You must make it detailed, make it specific. I like to see people write it down. But it must be theirs. They can't. I can't tell an individual what is going to work for them. So, I hope that.
Yeah. Well, is there any? So you don't have any structure in that? Have you heard of WRAP, which is a Wellness Recovery Action Program?
Yes.
That would be really good, I think.
Things of that nature are helpful, and an individual is if they find value there in that specific approach, yeah, absolutely do it. We freely exchange all of those ideas. Yeah, the thing we would avoid though is you should. Maybe a more general suggestion such as, well, I found value in CBT, or I found value in motivational interviewing.
Hi, I'm Midge. Much like the first person who spoke, I have a friend who joined Overeaters Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
It was very effective for her.
Mm-hmm.
She lost a lot of weight. She looks wonderful, and it's been a 2-year process so far. She's very committed to the organization. She is an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
She has tolerance for all of the God discussions that go on.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, they talk about higher power, and my higher power is nature.
Yeah.
And that's what I use, and it's very effective.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that she knows about LifeRing, but I'm happy to know about this. I think it's a terrific organization. If you have brochures, I will put some up in my office.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who needs them.
Right. Right. The challenge for me regarding the 12-step world, or the 12-step approach, was I was unable to recognize that an external force of whatever definition, an external force was responsible for my behavior. I couldn't wrap my arms around that. If someone else does, that's wonderful. That's their recovery. That's their choice. I don't understand it, but that's my problem, not the other individual. So that was the obstacle I couldn't get over with the 12-step approach. I just couldn't, was unable to go there. Yes?
Hi. Once again, I find particularly attractive to me is the self-empowerment idea. So, maybe it's my cultural heritage and attitudes. I'm wondering, do you use, what do they call them, sponsors? I'm interested in the idea of you don't tell people what to do, that it has to come from them. So how does that interaction, do you have like official one-on-one sponsors, or? Thank you.
The short answer is no. We do not. But what you're referring to, we would call sober friendships, I suppose. And I would encourage anyone in sobriety to develop those and develop them fully. What we really like to avoid is any sort of hierarchical relationship. So in the case of someone that's using 12-step in addition to LifeRing, they may have a sponsor in their 12-step program, and that's fine. I would simply encourage that person to make sure that it is a purely peer-to-peer relationship, non-hierarchical. A sponsor should be supportive as a friend, but should not be an instructor, in my opinion. So the answer is no, we don't have a specific sponsorship relationship, and we don't encourage that within LifeRing. If you are working 12-step in addition and have a sponsor, that's fine. I would just encourage care and caution like you would with any friendship. Choose your friends carefully. Yes?
Yeah, I've had many friends who've had problems with drugs, alcohol, and I've been to different meetings, AA, and some of them seem like cult-like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty much a lot of the people that run them, which anybody who's been to AA can start an AA. I mean, it's like you don't have to have any knowledge; you just have to been through it and been. Yeah. Well, you have to have read the book, but what I've seen is, the higher power is really stressed, and it's, you have to, and you're made to feel like, well, you're weak. You can't do it without anybody. I mean, you can't do it by yourself at all, and it's like you're a sinner and you have to atone. And that's the fourth step. You're atoning, and which I think is not too bad, where you're going out and telling people that you're sorry for what you did and all that. So, but I mean, that's why I think AA, you can't really get past that, and that's why it spreads, because you have so many people just going out and it is a religion.
It is inherently religious. I've seen versions of the 12 steps that were secularized, so to speak. I think there's a Buddhist 12-step that is attractive to many. Again, I keep going back to that external force being responsible for me. I couldn't get past that. So those people that do embrace that there is an external force, a higher power, whatever, more power to them. I wish them well. I think the 12-step organizations are fine organizations. Their intent is wonderful, and that is to support each other in sobriety. The implied message of they are the only way, I find offensive. So, yes?
Yeah, Alex again. With that in mind, I've heard that the AA meetings in the Bay Area here, well, actually, this is something I heard 20 years ago, but they're interesting because you've got an awful lot of secular people and some very intelligent people, and they're genuinely interesting meetings. What I've noticed, I have been to a few meetings elsewhere, and they seem to enjoy telling stories about their debauchery and there's a strong social
meetings,
bind in that sense, I think.
Yeah, in some meetings it can almost get to be a competitive. I was so down. Oh, really? I was more down than that, or it's. And to be honest, in LifeRing, we have, on occasion, you will have somebody that wants to vent and they need to spill all that stuff. Generally, though, we try not to focus on war stories, the drunkalogs, the drugalogs. It's our focus is where are you today and where are you going tomorrow. I can tell you, I'm a convicted felon. I can legally tell you I'm not, because Governor Reagan expunged my felony. So I could tell you that story if you wanted to hear how far down I went. It isn't relevant to your success or anybody else's success. So yeah, we avoid war stories, avoid the drunkalogs, drugalogs. I was in the gutter. It was, in NA, the most frequent thing you hear is, I was so fucked up. We all were. So I don't find that positive. I don't find it encouraging. But it happens in all of the meetings.
Hi, it's Chip again.
Yes.
Once again, the topic of California AA meetings versus Alabama AA meetings has come up. And while traveling once with my father, we actually attended an AA meeting in the church, in the chapel, led by the pastor. So the thought that California meetings are easy to be atheists within AA, I'm sure there are parts of America where they are equally assigned and not any remotely non. So my question that I want to roll this to is, LifeRing is California only, and what success have you had in more religious areas?
Sure. No, we are actually in 17 states, and we are in Ireland, very strong presence in Dublin, also in Northern Ireland and Belfast. 3 new meetings in Greater London. Actually, one of them is in Kent, but the other 2 are, well, near Kent, but still Greater London. We have a very strong community in Sweden. As a matter of fact, they just recently got the equivalent of a $20,000 grant to have all of our literature translated and published.
What about Alabama?
Not yet. Not yet. The difficulty in growing is the institutional resistance to acknowledgement, to recognition. We've had judges refuse to acknowledge. I will sign off an attendance card and put my rubber stamp on it, and the judge will say, "What's this?" And refuse to acknowledge attendance.
And that's here in California?
Here in California, within the Ninth Circuit, yes. Seattle, by the way, is within the Ninth Circuit. It's a similar situation. I hate to use this comparison, but Brown versus Board of Education was 1954, I think, mid-50s. Schools didn't begin to become integrated, until the mid-60s. So for at least a decade, that Supreme Court ruling was completely ignored. So it's a similar situation right now. The law is pretty clear that compelled or coerced attendance into 12-step exclusively is illegal. And it's certainly the law of the land in California and 9 western states. But local jurisdictions can ignore it, and they do. Because there is no, the only enforcement for it is civil litigation, and if you're under the duress of a sentence for whatever reason, are you going to challenge it? No. I can't sue because I don't have standing. Yeah. So, yes.
I've heard, I saw somewhere something about SMART, and I know that there are a lot of improvement things that use that acronym. What is it? How does that work with this? What are the words?
The SMART acronym, I think, is Self-Management and Recovery Training. And they actually, in Santa Clara County, have, I believe it's 3 meetings per week. 2 at Kaiser facilities and one at the Good Sam Mission Oaks campus. Fine organization. Use a slightly different approach than LifeRing does, but that's not relevant. It's a wonderful organization. So, yes.
I once belonged to Overeaters Anonymous.
Yeah.
And you might be a little surprised considering the fact that I dropped to less than 103 pounds. Yeah. But I understood it at the time that I have a problem with food. Right. And it doesn't matter which problem. I had a problem.
Right.
And that's how I approached it. Mm-hmm. And I've always kept that in mind. In other words, I'm always in danger. Mm-hmm. And just recently, I started to drop again because I was out to eliminate the bad carbohydrates, quote, bad. So I'm stopping that and realizing that that's part of the addiction. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to put that in, that you need to understand what's going on in your addiction.
Yeah, yeah, no, excellent. I think I mentioned, I'm not sure I need, for myself, I'm not sure I need to attend meetings for support at this point in my recovery. I'm in years and years of recovery. However, her point about remaining vigilant is extremely important. I don't believe it would ever be a wise decision for me to tempt myself in any way. It's apparent, the science is not really clear, but it is apparent that once you have crossed a line, and that line is different for everyone, but once you've crossed a line into addiction, or into substance abuse, moderation is near impossible. So abstinence is the best course. And in my case, I have a mean, lazy streak. To me, it was easiest. It was just easier to quit than to moderate. Yeah.
I'm Bob, and I'm just wondering if there's any encouragement for people that are in these programs once they have been able to achieve satisfaction for themselves, if they have any encouragement to go back and look into the problems that they have created for other people to begin with.
Yeah. Well, in the 12-step program, there is specifically one of the steps that you're encouraged to do is to make amends with people for the damage you may have caused. And we don't have a specific suggestion along those lines, but one of the domains in the workbook covers issues like that. Where possible, where it will possibly be received in a positive way, yes, you should apologize or make amends or whatever you want to call it. But yes, an addict has typically has a trail of damage behind them that is enormous in many, many cases. And yeah, certainly reaching out to where possible is important.
Be quite financial.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was struck by some of the comments about the more religious overtones in other parts of the country, and it got me wondering, is anyone conducting sobriety meetings online? Do you know if anyone's doing that? And how effective is it?
LifeRing and SMART, both.
Both?
We have online meetings, I believe, every day of the week. However, once again, getting a jurisdiction to accept that has been extremely difficult. They claim, well, we feel that face-to-face is better. There's no evidence to support that. There's no evidence to support the efficacy of online either, but I recently had a challenge with Orange County, California, over that exact issue. They had been accepting attendance in our online meetings for over a year, and then just arbitrarily said, nope, no, we're not going to accept that anymore. I attempted, with the help of Monica Miller from the Appignani Humanist Legal Center, attempted to counter that, and we failed.
Do you think part of it is the feeling that there's a punishment element to going to AA, and they feel that you're taking the easy way out?
I hesitate to speculate on that. I don't know. There are individuals in that environment that may have that feeling. I don't know.
Okay. Well, this will be the last question.
One quick question. Are any of these recovery groups operating in prisons and jails?
Yes, as a matter of fact. We are very active in the prison system in British Columbia. I have approached both San Quentin and Santa Clara County Elmwood facility, the gated community, we call it. Where else? We've been very active in a pen pal basis there. The incarcerated community is a huge challenge. But yes, we have reached out. SMART is very active in the prison community. But there again, I can only speak for LifeRing. We were in Missouri State Department of Corrections in 2 of their prison facilities for years, and were recently expelled just because. So,
Okay, let's thank our speaker for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you.